Some love stories don't begin with fireworks. They begin quietly, with patience, timing, and the feeling that life is finally lining up the way it was always meant to. That's exactly how Common describes the start of his relationship with Kimoko. Jennifer Hudson. According to him, this wasn't rushed. It wasn't random. It was divine alignment. He says it was one of those blessings you pray for, but only receive once you've done the growing. Once you've learned the lessons. Once you're finally ready. He explains that he and Jennifer had crossed paths before. They'd worked together. They had been in the same circles. Back then, the spark didn't ignite. Something was missing. And then, suddenly, the timing felt right. At least, that's the story being sold. But here's the thing. When you listen closely, something doesn't quite add up. Because while Common talks about divine timing and personal growth, the internet is asking a very different question. Is Jennifer Hudson about to pay the price for believing the same story every woman before her believed? On the surface, everything looks perfect. Common and Jennifer step out smiling, glowing, polished. Their photos are carefully curated. Their public appearances feel calm, mature, intentional. It's just enough affection to signal love, but never too much to feel messy. Picture-perfect. But behind the scenes, whispers are getting louder. And they're not whispers of fairy tales. They're warnings. Fans aren't fooled by the gloss anymore. Because history has taught them something crucial. With Common, the pattern always repeats. Jennifer Hudson may be smiling for the cameras, but the audience watching from the sidelines is uneasy, protective, suspicious, concerned, and not without reason. The blogs love dramatic headlines. Common blasts Jennifer Hudson, but let's be real, he doesn't need to drag her publicly. His past relationships already tell the entire story. Loudly. Every woman before Jennifer lived through the same emotional cycle. It always starts the same way. Common enters like a dream, smooth, charismatic, emotionally articulate. He praises his partner publicly, calling her the best thing that ever happened to him. He speaks in poetic language, elevates her, makes her feel chosen, seen, special, and the world falls for it every single time. But the moment commitment steps into the conversation, not romance, not passion, but forever. He disappears, not with scandals, not with cheating headlines, not with explosive drama. He simply fades, like smoke in the wind, and that's why fans are side-eyeing this romance. Even as Jennifer insists she's happy, because happiness in the moment has never been the problem. Let's rewind. Their relationship went public in 2022. After months of speculation, when it was finally confirmed, people cheered. This pairing felt different. A conscious rapper known for intellect and soul, linked with an ego-winning powerhouse who embodies strength and resilience. It felt grown, balanced, mature, intentional. People thought, finally, this is what grown love looks like when it's done right. For a while, the energy felt real. Their vibes matched. Their careers complemented each other. Neither seemed overshadowed. Neither looked desperate, unstoppable. But as time passed, the smile started to feel a little stiff. By late 2023, breakup rumors began bubbling quietly. Not explosive headlines, just persistent whispers. And those whispers never went away. Here's where fans started noticing the biggest red flag. Common suddenly became the loudest voice in the room. Interview after interview, he kept repeating how strong their bond was, how solid their relationship felt, how aligned they were, how grateful he was. Meanwhile, Jennifer stayed quiet, classy, low-key, reserved, and the internet noticed. People started asking, why does he sound like he's trying to convince us? Or himself? Because when a man with a shaky track record starts over-explaining his relationship, alarm bells go off. And Common's track record isn't just shaky, it's loud, too loud to ignore. With Serena Williams, he couldn't stop praising her. He called her incredible, powerful, a queen, once-in-a-lifetime woman. With Tiffany Haddish, He said she inspired him like no one else ever had, with Taraji P. Henson. He went even further, hinting she might be the one. And every single time the ending was the same. When things got serious, Common stepped back. So now when he gushes about Jennifer Hudson, fans don't hear romance anymore. They hear déjà vu, because Common has quietly earned a reputation as Hollywood's smoothest escape artist. He doesn't blow things up. He doesn't embarrass his partners publicly. He doesn't leave chaos behind. He just exits when forever feels too heavy. And for Jennifer Hudson, a woman who built her entire empire on resilience, discipline, and class, tying her brand to a man known for vanishing acts is risky. Very risky. Fans are saying the real blast isn't coming from an argument or a scandal. It's coming from Common's own history, crashing into the present like a warning siren. Jennifer might be next on his heartbreak playlist, and what makes the situation even more uncomfortable is who's actually doing the talking in this relationship. Every time Common gets a microphone, Jennifer's name comes up. He calls her a blessing, an incredible human being, a true partner. He even told Gayle King that he finally found someone real. The praise is thick, almost too thick. It starts to feel less like love and more like a performance, like he's auditioning for Husband of the Year. Meanwhile, Jennifer Hudson plays it cool. She posts the occasional sweet photo, smiles when asked, admits she's happy. But she never overshares. She doesn't need to. She's an EGOT winner, a daytime talk show host, a brand built on strength, not spectacle. Her silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. But fans are nervous anyway because they've seen this movie. Before Common gushes publicly, the woman stays composed. The world watches. And then he fades. Jennifer's quiet approach has people divided. Some think she's protecting her empire. Others believe she's letting him talk himself into a corner. Either way, the internet has already made up its mind. Common is working overtime because even he knows his past is messy, and that's the real explosion here. Not Jennifer shading him, not Common embarrassing her, but his past relationships colliding with his present, loudly. Because the more he shouts about their love, the shakier it starts to look. When fans say they've seen this movie before, they're not exaggerating. They're remembering details, interviews, timelines, quotes that all point to one uncomfortable truth. Common's love life follows a script, and the ending rarely changes. To understand why Jennifer Hudson's name now sits at the center of this debate, you have to rewind the clock and revisit the women who came before her. Not to shame them, not to compare them, but to recognize the pattern that keeps resurfacing no matter how different the woman is. Because if there's one thing these women don't have in common, it's weakness. Let's start with the relationship that still echoes the loudest: Serena Williams. The commitment that never came when Common and Serena Williams went public. The world was captivated. This wasn't just a celebrity couple. This was a cultural moment. Serena wasn't only the greatest tennis player of her generation. She was a global icon of discipline, dominance, and excellence. And Common, he seemed enamored. He praised her endlessly. Talked about her brilliance, her power, her work ethic. In interviews, he spoke like a man who knew he was standing next to greatness. Fans believe this one was different. Serena wasn't just a girlfriend, she was a force. But when the relationship ended, the truth cut through the polish. Serena didn't sugarcoat it. She admitted they broke up because Common couldn't commit long term. There were no cheating rumors, no explosive fights. Just a simple, painful reality when the conversation shifted toward permanence. He pulled back. Years later, Common himself confirmed it. He admitted he was the one who walked away. His explanation: he needed to focus on himself. That phrase would later become his signature exit line. To fans, it sounded hollow. Because focusing on yourself after walking away from a woman like Serena Williams didn't read as growth. It read as fear. Fear of settling. Fear of permanence. Fear of choosing one life and closing the door on all others. And that fear didn't disappear with time. Taraji P. Henson. Passion without stability. Fast forward to the mid-2000s. When Common and Taraji P. Henson became one of Hollywood's most magnetic couples, their chemistry was undeniable. They didn't hide it. They didn't downplay it. Common gushed about Taraji in interviews, calling her special, praising their connection, hinting that she was unlike anyone he'd been with before. Sound familiar? Taraji, known for her honesty and emotional transparency, later revealed the truth about why it ended. She didn't accuse him of betrayal. She didn't drag his name through the mud. She simply said he couldn't give her the stability she needed. No drama, no scandals, just absence. Once again, Common loved loudly and left quietly. And then there was the relationship that became legend, Erykah Badu, passion that burned to fasten the early 2000s. Common and Erykah Badu's relationship had the entire neo-soul community buzzing. This wasn't just romance, it was artistic chemistry. He rapped about her, wrote poetry, inspired by her, moved like a man hypnotized by love for a while. It looked intense, deep, all-consuming. But years later, when Common reflected on the breakup, he admitted how much it hurt him. He said the split devastated him. What most people didn't realize until later was this: Erykah ended it, and the reason. Once again, Common wasn't able to hold on long term. The passion was there, the admiration was there, the emotion was there, but permanence wasn't. Fans joke about the Badu effect. But beneath the humor is a harsher truth. This wasn't mysticism or magic. It was a man who thrived in passion but retreated when consistency became necessary. And the excuse? I wasn't ready. Again. Tiffany Haddish. The hope that fooled everyone, then came Tiffany Haddish. The relationship that genuinely softened people's hearts. This one felt warm, authentic, joyful. They went public during the pandemic, a time when vulnerability felt heightened and real. Tiffany glowed whenever she spoke about him. She didn't hide her feelings. She talked openly about love, about growth, about envisioning a future. Common, of course, played his role perfectly. He praised her publicly, called her beautiful, supportive, someone he could see a future with. And, for a moment, fans believed him. But less than 2 years later, it was over. Tiffany admitted she was blindsided. She didn't see it coming. She thought they were building something real. Common, meanwhile, went to the press with a familiar explanation. Busy schedules. The internet wasn't buying it. Fans pointed out the obvious. His schedule hadn't suddenly changed. He'd been balancing music, acting, activism, and relationships for decades. What changed wasn't time. It was commitment. When you line up these relationships, Serena, Taraji, Erykah, Tiffany, the pattern becomes impossible. To ignore different women, different eras, same ending. And that's why Jennifer Hudson's fans are nervous. Because this isn't about the women lacking something. These are powerful, successful, accomplished women. The common denominator has always been the man in the middle. The reputation. That won't go away over time. Common unintentionally built a reputation, not as a villain, not as a cheater, but as a man who loves deeply, publicly, poetically, and then quietly disappears when forever knocks. He writes you poetry, calls you his queen. He praises you in interviews, makes the world believe in your love. But when it's time to walk down the aisle, he hesitates and hesitates and hesitates. Until he's gone. So when fans look at Jennifer Hudson, they don't doubt his emotions in the moment. They don't think he's lying when he says he loves her. They just know how. This story usually ends. The real blast isn't a scandal waiting to happen. It's the echoes of all those women's stories bouncing off the walls. Warning Jennifer that history may be repeating itself. And in the court of public opinion, history carries more weight than promises. The internet delivers its verdict. Social media has already stamped Common with a new title, Mr. Can't Commit of Hollywood. The memes are ruthless. The TikTok stitches relentless. The Twitter threads unforgiving. Common, gone common. They joke. Translation. No matter how extraordinary the woman, people believe he'll eventually walk away. Still, not everyone is. Rooting for failure. Some fans hold hope. They believe if anyone can change the narrative, it's Jennifer Hudson. They point to her EGOT status, her strength, her resilience. They say she's too grounded, too established, too powerful to repeat the same cycle. But the other half of the internet isn't convinced. They argue that believing this time is different, is exactly how every story before her started. And that's the tension hanging over this relationship, hope versus history, where we're headed next as the world watches. One question remains unanswered. Has Common truly grown? Or is this just another polished chapter before the same ending? To understand why this relationship has people so emotionally invested, you have to understand who Jennifer Hudson really is, not just as a celebrity, but as a symbol. Jennifer Hudson isn't simply another famous woman dating a famous man. She represents survival, strength, and reinvention on a level very few entertainers ever reach. That's why fans aren't just watching this romance, they're guarding it. Because Jennifer's legacy wasn't handed to her. It was earned through pain, perseverance, and an unbreakable will. She rose to fame in a way that already defied expectations. From being eliminated early on American Idol to winning an Academy Award shortly after, Jennifer became proof that rejection doesn't define destiny. She transformed a public loss into a private fire. And that story alone made her relatable and inspiring. Then came the unimaginable. Personal tragedy, a chapter of her life that reshaped her forever. Instead of letting grief destroy her, Jennifer chose grace. She chose healing. She chose growth. And the world watched her rise again, stronger, quieter, and more intentional. Over time, she built something rare in Hollywood. Trust, an image of resilience, a reputation for class, a brand rooted in authenticity rather than chaos. That's why her EGOT status matters so much in this conversation. Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, Tony. That crown isn't just about awards. It represents longevity, discipline, and respect. Jennifer didn't chase fame. She built a legacy. Add to that her successful daytime talk show, where she presents herself as warm, thoughtful, and emotionally intelligent. And you begin to see why fans feel protective. Her entire public image is about empowerment, turning pain into purpose. So when Jennifer Hudson aligns herself romantically with someone, people assume it's intentional, carefully considered, emotionally grounded, well thought out. And that's exactly why Common's reputation makes fans uneasy to brands. One risky collision in paper. Common and Jennifer Hudson look like a power couple. Both are Grammy and Oscar winners. Both are respected. Both are admired. Both represent depth and substance rather than superficial fame. But when you look closer, the contrast becomes uncomfortable. Jennifer's brand is about stability. Common's history suggests hesitation. Jennifer represents endurance. Common represents inconsistency. That contrast is the ticking time bomb. Because if this relationship ends the way his others have ended, it won't just be another breakup headline. It will feel like a betrayal of everything Jennifer's image stands for. Fans are already whispering that she might be lying to herself, not because she's weak, but because her carefully constructed image doesn't leave room for vulnerability. That looks like misjudgment. Admitting the relationship isn't secure would mean admitting she may have ignored red flags. And for someone who has spent years being seen as unshakable, that's a difficult truth to publicly face. That's where the danger lies. Silence as strategy or warning. Jennifer's silence throughout this relationship has been a major talking point. She doesn't overshare, she doesn't overexplain. Some see that as wisdom. They believe she's protecting her peace, her brand, and her privacy. In an era where celebrities overshare everything, Jennifer's restraint feels refreshing and powerful, but others interpret it differently. They wonder if her silence is allowing Common to control the narrative. While he speaks passionately about the relationship, he shapes public perception. He gets ahead of doubts. He reassures the audience before they even ask questions. Meanwhile, Jennifer's quiet approach leaves room for speculation. And speculation is dangerous in Hollywood. Fans are torn between admiration and concern. Is she being smart? Or is she letting history repeat itself quietly? The pressure of public expectation, like Common's previous relationships, this one carries enormous public pressure. Not just because of fame, but because of symbolism. Jennifer Hudson is viewed as the woman who rises above heartbreak, not the woman who gets caught in cycles. People expect her to see what others missed, to avoid mistakes others made. That expectation is unfair, but it's real, and Common knows it. That's why his interviews feel heavier now, more intentional, more deliberate. He isn't just defending a relationship, he's defending himself. Against years of public judgment, every compliment he gives Jennifer feels like a rebuttal to his own past. I've changed. I've grown. This is different. But growth doesn't come from words. It comes from actions. And fans are waiting to see those actions. What happens if history repeats? Common eventually pulls away quietly, politely, without drama. The fallout won't be subtle. The internet will explode with "we told you so" memes will write themselves. His reputation will harden into something permanent. No more benefit of the doubt. No more hope narratives. He won't just be the man who struggled with commitment. He'll be remembered as the man who couldn't commit even when everything was aligned. And Jennifer, she'll face another kind of challenge protecting her empire while navigating public heartbreak. Not because she can't survive it, but because she shouldn't have to. That's why fans are anxious, not because they doubt her strength, but because they don't want to see her tested again. The love story becomes a case study at this point. This relationship is no longer just a romance. It's a case study in reputation, growth, and accountability. Can a man truly outgrow a pattern that's followed him for decades? Can love alone rewrite history? Or does history always find a way to repeat itself? Jennifer Hudson stands at the center of these questions, not as a victim, but as a symbol of what happens when personal life and public legacy collide. And that collision is coming, one way or another. While critics are loud, Common is far from standing alone. For every skeptic predicting heartbreak, there's a defender insisting this time is different. And their argument isn't based on blind loyalty, it's built on something more nuanced. Growth. According to Common supporters, the man being judged today is not the same man who walked away from Serena Williams, Taraji P. Henson, Erykah Badu, or Tiffany Haddish. They argue that people evolve, especially when life forces self-reflection. And in Common's case, he's been vocal about doing exactly that. Therapy, that word comes up again and again in his recent interviews. Common has openly spoken about going to therapy, unpacking emotional cycles, and recognizing patterns in his relationships. He's admitted that in the past he struggled with commitment because he didn't fully understand himself. He's talked about fear, emotional avoidance, and the way he would retreat when relationships became too serious to his defenders. This level of honesty matters. They see it as accountability. They see it as growth. They see it as a man finally doing the work. And they believe Jennifer Hudson represents the reward for that work, not another chapter in a pattern, but the conclusion of it. The redemption narrative. Hollywood loves a redemption story, a man who learns from his mistakes, confronts his flaws, and finally gets it right. Supporters believe Common is in the middle of that exact arc. They point out that he's older now, more settled, more reflective, less driven by ego. They argue that his past relationships weren't failures, they were lessons. And Jennifer, they say, entered his life at the right moment, when he was finally emotionally prepared. This idea ties directly into Common's favorite phrase, divine timing. According to him, he didn't get what he prayed for until he was ready. And when he was ready, Jennifer appeared. Not randomly, not accidentally, but intentionally to believers. This framing makes sense. They argue that timing is everything and maturity can't be rushed. Just because Common couldn't commit in his 30s or early 40s doesn't mean he's incapable of commitment now. And they remind critics of one simple truth. People are allowed to change. Why Jennifer feels different to him. And other key defense is the way Common speaks about Jennifer specifically. Supporters claim his tone is different this time. More grounded, less performative. Less about fantasy and more about partnership. They say he doesn't just praise her beauty or talent. He talks about how she challenges him, how she pushes him to grow, how she mirrors the life he wants to build. To them, that matters. They believe Jennifer's strength and independence remove the pressure that may have scared him in the past. She doesn't need him to complete her. She doesn't depend on him emotionally or financially. That kind of dynamic, they argue, feels safer for someone who previously feared being consumed by a relationship. Jennifer doesn't demand, she invites. And maybe that's why this relationship has lasted longer than some expected. They counter-argument. Words versus proof. But here's where skeptics push back hard. They don't dismiss therapy. They don't deny growth. They just ask one question. Where's the proof? Talking about growth is easy. Acknowledging patterns is important. But breaking those patterns requires action. Consistent, visible, undeniable action. So far, fans haven't seen the one thing that would silence all doubts. A clear, long-term commitment, no engagement, no marriage talk, no public future plans, just reassurance. And reassurance coming from someone with a history of leaving doesn't land the same way. That's why Common's constant interviews feel risky. The more he talks about how solid things are, the more people scrutinize what's missing. Because if growth is real, it will show not in interviews, but in decisions. Jennifer's role in the redemption story, some supporters believe. Jennifer herself is the proof. They argue that a woman of her caliber wouldn't stay in a situation that felt unstable. They believe she sees something the public doesn't: consistency, safety, effort, and maybe she does. But critics argue that even the strongest women can hope for the best. Even the most accomplished people can believe they're the exception. History is filled with powerful women who thought love would be different for them. That doesn't make them foolish. It makes them human. The high stakes of being wrong here's the uncomfortable truth both sides acknowledge. Common fails this time, there's no coming back. No redemption arc. No benefit of the doubt. No second chances. The narrative will solidify permanently. He won't be remembered as a man who struggled but grew. He'll be remembered as a man who talked about growth without proving it. And that's why this relationship feels heavier than any before it. Not because Jennifer Hudson needs saving, but because Common's reputation is on trial. This isn't just about love anymore. It's about credibility. The calm before the verdict right now. Everything feels suspended in time. No official breakup, no engagement, no dramatic shift, just waiting. Fans are watching every interview, every photo, every silence, waiting to see whether this story becomes a redemption or a repeat.